Chapter 71. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Agree. SCP-166 nodded, looking very well behaved. SCP-035 said in a hoarse voice that he agreed. SCP-049 shook his head. My SCP-049-2 has not been made yet, I need more corpses. Then, we will find you some corpses first, so that you can make SCP-049-2. Death Siren said in a deep voice. Mo glanced at SCP-049. After killing the people he thought had the plague, SCP-049 would show frustration and regret, because, in his opinion, this method of killing the target is of little help in eliminating the plague. Then, SCP-049 will use the surgical instruments in a black medical bag he carries with him to perform a rough operation on the target corpse. This operation of SCP-049 will lead to the appearance of SCP-049-2, but it is not always successful and there is a certain probability of failure. SCP-049-2 are corpses that were resurrected through SCP-049 surgery. These SCP-049-2 cannot retain their memories or mental functions before they died, but only have the most basic motor functions and reaction functions. They usually move around to be active, but if they are angered or controlled by SCP-049, they will become extremely aggressive. They can obey SCP-049's orders and fight for him. In SCP-049's view, the resurrection of SCP-049-2 is a sign that the plague has been cured. When Mo Yu thought of these SCP-049-2, he thought of zombies. These SCP-049-2 are similar to zombies, but they are all zombies controlled by SCP-049. In other words, if SCP-049 is given enough corpses, he can revive them, and SCP-049 will have an army of the dead. Mo Yu is also very afraid of SCP-049's abnormal ability. Now, they have to prepare some corpses for SCP-049, so that he can revive these corpses and create SCP-049-2. I know there is a place where 7 corpses are buried. Mo Yu said in a deep voice. He thought of the 7 bodies of math teachers that he had buried before, which happened to be useful now. Where? Death Siren said happily. SCP-049 also looked up at Mo Yu, with a hint of irritability in his eyes. He was about to lose control of himself again. He wanted to cure Mo Yu's plague. I'll let SCP-166 take him there, and create SCP-049-2 there. Mo Yu said in a deep voice. He didn't want to stay in the same room with SCP-049. SCP-049 wanted to come to cure his plague at any time, and he had to be on guard against SCP-049 at any time, which made him feel very uncomfortable. Therefore, he also asked SCP-166 to take SCP-049 to find the 7 bodies of the math teacher. Before SCP-166 left, the Siren of Death gave her some lavender, indicating that if SCP-049 suddenly became irritable, she should use lavender to deal with him. After SCP-166 left with SCP-049, Mo Yu felt relaxed and no longer stressed. I can't get too close to SCP-049. Even when we break through, we must separate, Mo Yu said in a deep voice. Well, we will think about this matter carefully, the Siren of Death said. SCP-035 looked at Mo Yu strangely. SCP-049 was only interested in Mo Yu, but he thought it was a little weird that he was the only one who got the plague, and no one else did. Mo Yu also looked at SCP-035 strangely, because, according to the information he obtained, the relationship between SCP-035 and SCP-049 was as close as lovers. SCP-049 and SCP-035 met in the wilderness. SCP-049 picked up SCP-035 and put it on his face, and then they began to travel together. They admired each other, and the SCP Foundation speculated that they were lovers. But Mo Yu observed that just now SCP-049 was comforted by SCP-035 and did calm down quickly, although it was by lavender. However, the quiet SCP-049 and SCP-035 were almost leaning on each other. And the relationship between the two was very close. The body occupied by SCP-035 will slowly corrode until it is no longer can move. SCP-035 can occupy sculptures, as long as they are human-shaped, mannequins in clothing stores, and corpses, he can occupy them. However, these things occupied by him will slowly be corroded by the corrosive liquid he exudes. Mo Yu also knew that SCP-035 was very interested in the old man, because the old man has the power of regeneration. Even if he is corroded, he can regenerate. He is the best host for SCP-035. After the death siren and Mo Yu discussed with SCP-035 for a while, SCP-035 stood up. I need to change my body, and at the same time, I'll go see how SCP-049 is going. After that, SCP-035 left the villa. Mo Yu noticed that the body occupied by SCP-035 had been corroded for the most part, and he really needed to change his body. After SCP-035 left the villa, he came to a corner, and his eyes looked at the villa deeply. Mo Yu. SCP-035 muttered to himself, and a trace of desire flashed in his eyes. He seemed to be very interested in Mo Yu. Inside the villa, after SCP-035 left, Mo Yu looked at the death siren solemnly. Have you told SCP-035 about my special ability? The death siren looked at Mo Yu in confusion and shook his head. No, I asked you to join me when I was looking for 166. What's wrong? No, it's good. Mo Yu breathed a sigh of relief, but he always felt uneasy. He felt that SCP-035 had improper thoughts about him, because he devoured SCP-682 and obtained the regenerative power of the old man. SCP-035 has always wanted to occupy the old man and obtain a body that will never be corroded. Now, he has the same regenerative power as the old man. In other words, he is the body that SCP-035 wants to find that will never corrode. If SCP-035 knew that he had the power of regeneration, then it would occupy his body and kill him at all costs. No, SCP-035 occupied my body once at the exit of Metro Line 4. Suddenly, Mo Yu remembered something that made his scalp tingle. P.S. Please give me a 5-star review, a gift, and urge me to update. If you click on the video after urging me to update, you can give me a gift for free. Author has something to say. Please give me a 5-star review, a gift, and urge me to update. If you click on the video after urging me to update, you can give me a gift for free. Chapter 72. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He met SCP-035 on Subway Line 4. They once fought with the SCP Foundation task force at the exit. That time, he clearly remembered that SCP-035 once appeared on his face from the face of another task force soldier, and SCP-035 tried to occupy his body and kill his brain, although it failed. However, when SCP-035 occupied his body, the corrosive liquid that flowed out did corrode his body. However, his regenerative power restored the corroded skin. In other words, SCP-035 already knew the regenerative power of his body. SCP-035 knew that his body had the power of regeneration, just like a drug addict saw a bag of drugs, which was a fatal temptation for him. Therefore, Mo Yu concluded that SCP-035 would never let him go, and would definitely try every means to kill him and occupy his body, so as to have a body that will never be corroded. No, I can't stay here. Mo Yu said in a deep voice. He was very sure that SCP-035 knew about his regenerative power, and would definitely find a way to deal with him. Now, he was working with SCP-035 to escape from Shishan City, which was wrong. SCP-035 would definitely find a way to occupy his body during the cooperation process, so he couldn't cooperate with SCP-035. Moreover, he had to leave the villa. Who knew if SCP-035 would join forces with SCP-049 to deal with him? After all, their relationship was as close as lovers. What happened? Death Siren looked at Mo Yu puzzledly. She didn't know what happened yet, why Mo Yu suddenly changed his mind. You should know about SCP-035 special ability, Mo Yu said in a deep voice. I know, what's wrong, Death Siren frowned. Don't you understand yet? My regenerative power has a fatal attraction to SCP-035. He will find a way to occupy my body. Mo Yu said to Death Siren in a deep voice. Death Siren, with a flash of inspiration in his mind, understood everything instantly, and looked at Mo Yu in a complicated way. But, SCP-035 probably doesn't know your regenerative power yet, and I haven't told him about your ability. Maybe we can cooperate first, escape Shishan City first, and then we can separate. What do you think? Death Siren didn't want to give up. He needed Mo Yu's fighting power and SCP-035 to form an alliance with great difficulty. If either party left, their plan to escape Shishan City would be greatly affected. He knew it a long time ago. Mo Yu took a deep breath. He knew. Death Siren trembled inwardly, and his mind went blank. Originally everything was going according to plan, but he didn't expect such a link to appear in the middle. Then how about, when he comes back, we explain everything and reach an agreement, and when we leave Shishan City, you can solve it between each other. How about it? Death Siren still didn't want to give up. No, I'd rather break out by myself than be with SCP-035. Mo Yu shook his head. He didn't want to be with an anomaly that wanted to kill him and occupy his body at any time. It was too dangerous, especially when breaking out. Who knows if SCP-035 will stab him in the back. Moreover, there is SCP-049, both of whom are full of malice towards him. The key is that the relationship between these two anomalies is unusually close. They may unite to deal with him, which will make it even more difficult for him. If you leave, 166 will follow you, and our chance to break out will be ruined. Death Siren said frustratedly. We can get rid of SCP-035 and SCP-049, and the three of us will break out. Mo Yu said. No, we can't leave without them. Death Siren shook his head. SCP-035's power to control people's hearts and SCP-049's ability to resurrect corpses are the keys to their escape from Shishan City. Without their abnormal powers, their hope of escaping Shishan City would be very slim. The SCP Foundation already knows how to deal with my singing voice. Moreover, the SCP Foundation can use female warriors to deal with 166's power of desire. In this case, the two of us will have almost no fighting power. If you want to take us out by yourself, it is very difficult. We need their help. Death Siren shook his head. Mo Yu frowned. What Death Siren said was indeed a little bit reasonable. However, thinking that SCP-035 has always wanted to occupy his body, he couldn't accept it. Moreover, SCP-049 has always wanted to cure his plague, and these two anomalies will attack him at any time. System, what should I do? Under such a difficult choice, Mo Yu could only ask for help from the system. Perhaps, the system could point out a clear way for him. Host, although SCP-035 can occupy your body, he can't destroy your consciousness with me here. I will do my best to stop him, and you only need to keep a distance of more than 2 meters from him, and he can't do anything to you. I agree with Death Siren's plan. Host, you need their special abilities to help you escape from Shishan City. Without them, the host wants to leave Shishan City. There is almost no hope. Inside his mind, the voice of the system came, and Mo Yu's emotions gradually calmed down. After hearing what the system said, Mo Yu also calmed down. He did have a way to deal with SCP-035. If it was more than 2 meters away from him, it would be safe. Moreover, the Death Siren and the system were right. Now, Shishan City was completely blocked by the SCP Foundation. He had already gone out to explore, and he couldn't escape by any means. Now, with the help of SCP-049 and SCP-035, he did have a glimmer of hope to escape, so, he decided to listen to the system. At worst, he would take a risk and cooperate with SCP-035 and SCP-049. As long as he was on guard against these two anomalies during the process, after escaping from Shishan City, he would stay away from these two anomalies as soon as possible, or find a way to kill them. I agree to cooperate, but you have to help me keep an eye on them. Mo Yu thought for a while, and said to the death siren seriously. No problem, if they attack you, I will help you deal with them. The death siren was overjoyed. Chapter 73. You are listening at novelfull.audio. She was ready to give up, but unexpectedly, at the critical moment, Mo Yu agreed again. SCP-035 wanted to occupy Mo Yu's body, which she did not expect. If she had thought of it, she would not have brought Mo Yu here so recklessly. This villa was owned by a rich man occupied by SCP-035, but now this rich man has been killed by SCP-035. The Devour community, ordinary people can't enter. Even human law enforcers need to report to enter the Devour community, so, it is basically the safest place here. Of course, the Devour community can only resist human law enforcers, but not the agents and task force soldiers of the SCP Foundation. It's easy for them to come in. Mo Yu and the death siren waited for a while, and SCP-049 and SCP-035 came back. SCP-166's face turned pale. She saw SCP-049 perform surgery on the bodies of the 7 math teachers with her own eyes. Moreover, SCP-049 was performing the operation, while muttering something about saving people. Then, she saw one of the dead math teachers suddenly come back to life, and she turned pale with fear. Then, one by one, the math teachers who were originally dead slowly came back to life during SCP-049's operation. At first, their bodies were stiff and their movements were very slow, just like babies learning to walk, but slowly, they could move around like normal people, and they only listened to SCP-049's orders. At this time, a total of 5 corpses were resurrected and followed SCP-049 back to the Devour community. When Mo Yu saw the 5 dead math teachers, now resurrected, standing next to S4P-049 in black robes, his pupils also shrank. 7 corpses were resurrected. 5, the success rate is very high. Mo Yu was even more afraid of SCP-049. 5 SCP-049-2 are not enough. I need more corpses to make SCP-049-2. SCP-049 said lightly. In his cognition, he performed surgery on corpses to eliminate the plague, and he saved humanity. Now, he felt quite accomplished because he saved 5 humans and eliminated their plague. Mo Yu stood far away from SCP-049, worried that SCP-049 would control the 5 SCP-049-2 to attack him. At the same time, he kept a distance of more than 2 meters from SCP-035. A distance of more than 2 meters was a safe distance to prevent SCP-035 from attacking him. I'll go find the corpse. SCP-035's hoarse voice sounded. You can't kill innocent people indiscriminately. Mo Yu shook his head. He knew that if SCP-035 was allowed to find corpses, he would definitely occupy humans one by one and kill them. We need corpses now. SCP-035 looked at Mo Yu calmly, with a hint of coldness in his eyes. Although we do need corpses, we don't have to kill people. We can go to the morgue in the hospital. Mo Yu said in a deep voice. The death siren saw that the atmosphere between Mo Yu and SCP-035 was a little serious, so she quickly stood in the middle and said, Mo Yu is right. There are many dead patients in the morgue of the hospital. It is most appropriate to use them to create SCP-049-2. Humph. SCP-035 snorted coldly. Although dissatisfied, he stopped and no longer wanted to occupy ordinary people. Then, let's go to the hospital morgue to find corpses. The death siren saw that everyone agreed, and she smiled. Mo Yu still felt a little wrong in his heart. Although SCP-049-2 could be created using corpses in the hospital morgue, however, those corpses all have family members. They are stealing corpses in this way, and the relatives of those corpses will definitely be very sad. However, if they don't go to the morgue to use these corpses, then SCP-035 will not hesitate to go out and occupy humans and kill them one by one. Instead of letting SCP-035 kill living humans, it is better to use the corpses in the morgue. Thinking of this, Mou felt a little comforted. A group of people went to Shishan First People's Hospital. The hospital was still busy at night. However, there were fewer people than during the day. The morgue of the hospital is usually located in the underground floors. Mou and others took advantage of the night and quietly came to the parking lot of Shishan First People's Hospital. Along the way, wasps flew by their ears at any time. They covered their faces and quickly flashed through the darkness, shaking off the wasp. Soon, they arrived at the parking lot. The lights in the parking lot were on, and there was a surveillance video. "Wait a minute, these lights have to be turned off," Mou said in a deep voice. Although they were very fast, the lights in the parking lot were as bright as day. If they shuttled in it, they would definitely be captured by the surveillance video. "How to turn it off?" The death siren said. "We need to send someone to find the main switch and turn it off, and then we can take the opportunity to sneak into the morgue." Mou looked at SCP-049 and said. "You want me to go?" SCP-049 looked at Mou, with a hint of irritability in his eyes. "No, you don't have to go, let your SCP-049-2 go." Mou looked at the 5 SCP-049-2 behind SCP-049. "Good idea," the death siren's eyes lit up. Finally, SCP-049 also controlled one of the SCP-049-2 behind him to go to the parking lot to find the main switch. Mou and others were also prepared. As soon as the lights in the parking lot went out, they would rush to the elevator as soon as possible. SCP-049 controlled SCP-049-2 to search in the parking lot and soon found the main switch, and then turned it off. The lights in the parking lot went out instantly, and Mou and others quickly went to the elevator. After they arrived at the elevator, SCP-049-2 turned on the switch again. After power was turned on, the elevator could run normally, and then they all entered the elevator. There was a camera in the elevator. The moment they entered, Mou blocked the camera with his clothes. The morgue of Shishan First People's Hospital is on the 3rd underground floor. The elevator stopped on the 3rd underground floor. The elevator door opened, and Mou and others all walked out, all wearing masks on their faces. In the long corridor, Mou and others quickly found the morgue. There was a duty room next to the morgue, and a security guard was on duty inside. Chapter 74. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this time, the security guard was sleeping on a bed in the duty room. Although the morgue is scary, brave people can still sleep here. Moreover, the morgue is very quiet, and basically no one comes. Nothing will happen. After a long time, the security guards who come here to work are used to it, just like in an ordinary house. Sleep when you need to sleep and eat when you need to eat. Today, some uninvited guests came to the morgue. The security guard in the duty room is still asleep. SCP-035 looked at the security guard in the duty room and said coldly, "There is a living person here. We can't let him know that we have been here. Let me go in and kill him. Don't kill innocent people indiscriminately. I'll go in and knock him out." Mou stopped SCP-035. They just came to the morgue to steal corpses, not to kill people. This security guard was in his sleep. If SCP-035 killed him, Mou would feel uneasy. Moreover, the security guard did nothing wrong. He just came to the morgue to work, because the salary for the morgue is very high. Maybe he has a family to support. If he died, his family life would be very difficult. Therefore, Mou couldn't let SCP-035 kill the security guard. Humph. SCP-035 hummed in dissatisfaction. Mou had stopped him from killing twice. Mou quietly came to the door of the duty room. The door was locked, but it was not difficult for him. He pressed his finger on the door and made a hole. Then, starting from this hole, he pressed a circle on the door little by little. After he obtained the regeneration power and terrifying combat power of the uncle, his physical strength was very strong. After digging a hole in the door, he reached his hand into the hole and opened the door from the inside. And then he entered the room quietly, while the security guard was snoring in his sleep. He gently tapped his neck and made him faint. After the security guard fainted, Mou left the duty room. Then, they went to the morgue. The door of the morgue was still locked, but Mou found the key from the security guard. He opened the door of the morgue with the key, and after everyone entered the morgue, they saw corpses lying in the morgue. The lights in the morgue were off and not turned on, and MOU and others did not need lights. They could see the corpses in the dark. Then, MOU and others waited for SCP-049 to perform surgery on these corpses to revive them. We have to be quick. If we take too long, we may attract people from the SCP Foundation. MOU said in a deep voice. SCP-049 walked excitedly in front of a corpse. In his opinion, he was eliminating the plague for mankind, and he could save people immediately. Therefore, he took out 3 surgical supplies from his bag and began to operate on the corpse in front of him. MOU stared at SCP-049. SCP-049's surgery was very rough, and it could not even be called surgery. However, the corpse lying there miraculously moved its fingers and actually came back to life. MOU was shocked. He was still shocked to see SCP-049 revive a corpse with his own eyes. MOU couldn't figure out what the principle was. MOU was a little afraid that SCP-049 would destroy humanity. He also understood why the SCP Foundation wanted to contain these anomalies, lock them up, and not allow them to appear in the eyes of ordinary people. These anomalies all have the power to destroy humanity, and SCP-049 can revive corpses, and these corpses are like zombies, completely obeying SCP-049's command. If SCP-049 continues to create SCP-049-2, resurrect corpses, and let them attack humans, the consequences will be very terrible. I don't know if these corpses will bite people, and if they will turn people into zombies after biting them like zombies. However, looking at these resurrected corpses, they just walk like normal people. He was relieved that they did not show the desire to eat people. It seems that people will not be turned into zombies by biting. Then, SCP-049 is a weaker threat to humans. However, MOU noticed that these resurrected corpses are much stronger than when they were alive. In a one-on-one situation, ordinary humans are not our opponents. If SCP-049 hides and keeps creating SCP-049-2, it will also be a huge threat to humans. MOU frowned. His eyes swept over SCP-049 and SCP-035. What is the purpose of this legendary couple escaping from the containment of the SCP Foundation together? SCP-049 and SCP-035 are really a perfect pair together. Both have the terrible ability to kill humans forever. SCP-035 can occupy the living, the dead, and the sculptures. SCP-049 can kill the living and resurrect the dead. Both have terrifying abilities. MOU looked at the corpses that were resurrected during SCP-049's surgery, and his scalp was tingling. Of course, the success rate of SCP-049's surgery is not 100%, and he will fail. At this time, there are 3 corpses that have not been resurrected. SCP-049 was very upset. He thought he had not eliminated the plague of these 3 corpses. However, he has now resurrected more than 50 corpses, including the 5 he resurrected before. Now, 55 SCP-049-2 stood in the morgue. They stood aside like living people, quietly looking at SCP-049 like sculptures. They only obeyed the command of SCP-049 alone. MOU stood by the door, away from these SCP-049-2. If SCP-049 controlled these SCP-049-2 to attack him, he might be surrounded. He must occupy a favorable terrain, and he must be on guard against the CP of SCP-049 and SCP-035 at any time. When SCP-049 was performing surgery, MOU felt SCP-035's eyes sweeping over him. This made MOU alert. SCP-035 must have some plan for him. It's just that, now that they are working together, SCP-035 held back. He frowned, and his inner vigilance increased a little. Chapter 75. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Suddenly, MOU felt someone holding his arm. His body straightened, and he was ready to take action reflexively, but he found that it was SCP-166 who was holding his arm. Teacher, it's so scary, I'm scared. SCP-166 whispered in MOU's ear, and MOU felt a hot air rushing to his ear, which made his heart tremble. Don't be afraid, Mo said in a deep voice. In essence, SCP-166 is just a 16 or 17-year-old girl. She just has a terrible power of desire, and her heart is not bad. At this time, seeing SCP-049 resurrecting the dead one by one, it is normal to be afraid, just like an ordinary human girl seeing such a scene. Moreover, these resurrected dead are indeed full of threats to SCP-166. In front of these dead people, her power of desire cannot be expressed. These dead people are not affected by her at all, so in front of these dead people, she is a weak girl who is powerless. If SCP-049 really wanted to kill her, she would be easily torn to pieces by these SCP-049-2. The death siren also looked at these SCP-049-2 with great fear. Although her death song could make humans fall into illusions and could not wake up easily, however, she knew that her death song was ineffective for these SCP-049-2, these were just dead people and had no consciousness at all. Therefore, they would not be affected by her death song. If these dead people attacked her, she would be in great danger. The death siren could not help but stand beside Mo Yu. Mo Yu was powerful, and in her opinion, she felt safer around Mo Yu. She also understood a little why Mo Yu was so afraid of SCP-049 and SCP-035. These two abnormal abilities were really too terrifying and threatening. They cooperated with SCP-049 and SCP-035, which was really a tiger's skin. The number of patients visiting Shishan First People's Hospital is the largest in Shishan. Of course, people die in the hospital every day. The dead are temporarily placed in the morgue, and then their families are notified to take them back. There are more than 100 bodies in the morgue. Under SCP-049's operation, these bodies were resurrected one by one, and finally, 93 were resurrected, including the previous 5. There are 98 SCP-049-2 behind SCP-049. However, SCP-049 is still not satisfied. He looked at the dozen or so bodies that could not be resurrected, and he thought he had not cured the plague in them. He felt very upset that he had not cured them. You have saved 98 people. You are already very good. You have done a good job. Don't be upset. SCP-035 patted SCP-049's shoulder to comfort him. After SCP-049 was comforted by SCP-035, a smile appeared on his face. When Mo Yu saw the scene of SCP-049 and SCP-035 at this time, they really looked like a pair of close lovers. He felt very strange. It's almost done, let's go. Mo Yu frowned and said. He always felt a little uneasy in his heart. Let's go. The bodies have been used up, so they don't have to stay in the morgue. Therefore, they also opened the door of the morgue and walked to the corridor outside. 98 SCP-049-2, all walked behind SCP-049. They were neat and orderly, like a well-trained army. Mo Yu looked back at the 98 SCP-049-2 behind him. This is a troop full of threats to humans. Let's take the elevator out in batches. There are too many people, and the elevator can only accommodate 10 people at most, so, they must be teleported out in batches. However, when they walked to the elevator, they found that the elevator had stopped running. No matter how they pressed the button, the elevator door could not be opened. Broken. Death siren frowned. Something is wrong. Mo Yu said in a deep voice. The elevator had enough power and did not look broken at all. Someone was controlling the elevator and not allowing them to leave. Click. Suddenly, all the lights in the corridor went out, and the surroundings fell into darkness. Oh no, they found us. Mo Yu's ears were very good, and he heard the buzzing of wasps. The Foundation actually found them. They stayed in the morgue for a long time, which was long enough for the SCP Foundation to find them. After all, there were cameras in the morgue. Although they blocked these cameras, they also attracted the attention of the hospital staff. Perhaps the hospital staff notified the SCP Foundation. The SCP Foundation was actually connected to the First People's Hospital of Shishan City. It seems that the SCP Foundation is really everywhere. Prepare for battle. Mo Yu said in a deep voice. Everyone officially entered a state of alert. At the same time, Mo Yu looked at the stairs next to him. The elevator could not go, so they could only go out from the stairs. He ran towards the stairs, and the others followed him from the stairs. The stairs were through the inside of the hospital. If they climbed up the stairs, they would go directly into the hospital, but now they could not care so much. If they continued to stay in the morgue, they would be caught by the SCP Foundation. The agents of the SCP Foundation would come to the morgue to capture, contain, or kill them. However, when they climbed up the stairs, they were crowded with task force soldiers and agents of the SCP Foundation. Countless cold weapons were pointed at them. As soon as Mo Yu showed his head, he was shot by countless bullets. He retreated instantly. They blocked the exit. Mo Yu's face was ugly. He didn't expect that they were really caught by the SCP Foundation. "Let me do it." The death siren walked to the stairs and then sang the song of death. This burst of heavenly singing was transmitted, and the task force soldiers and agents who blocked the exit at the stairs were instantly trapped in a fantasy. They were stunned on the spot, and Mo Yu and others also took advantage of the death song to control the task force soldiers and agents and rushed up quickly. At the same time, 98 SCP-049-2 rushed into the task force soldiers and agents, and frantically tore these task force soldiers and agents into pieces. They were extremely strong, and the bodies of these task force soldiers and agents were as fragile as paper in their hands, and were torn into pieces in an instant. Blood flowed all over the ground, and the strong smell of blood floated in the air. Chapter 76. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The task force soldiers and agents at the stairs were destroyed without any resistance. Mo Yu and others also rushed to the second underground floor, then the first underground floor, and then came out of the internal exit of the hospital and came to the hospital corridor. At this time, the corridor was full of task force soldiers and agents. They had been waiting for a long time, but the death song of the death siren made them all fall into illusion. At this time, a loud heavy metal music sounded, directly covering the death song. Those task force soldiers and agents who were trapped in the illusion also slowly regained consciousness. However, when they opened their eyes, they saw a naked girl of 16 or 17 standing in front of them. Then, all their inner desires were aroused. All the male task force soldiers and agents rushed towards SCP-166 like crazy. Catch her. After seeing SCP-166, those female task force soldiers and female agents, they rushed towards SCP-166 angrily, but the dense SCP-049-2 stood in front of SCP-166. They were not charmed by SCP-166, they protected SCP-166. After the female task force soldiers and female agents came over, they were blocked by these SCP-049-2. Moreover, these SCP-049-2 picked up the guns on the ground and turned to shoot at these agents and task force soldiers. Suddenly, a group of corpses fell to the ground. Plague, I want to save people. SCP-049 looked at so many corpses on the ground. He knelt in front of a corpse excitedly, took out the surgical instruments and started the operation. He quickly revived the corpse of a task force soldier. Mo Yu ran to the other side when SCP-166 took off the heart of the sea from his neck. He didn't want to be charmed by SCP-166. He rushed into the task force soldiers in the distance, killing them one by one frantically. SCP-035 moved on the faces of the task force soldiers one by one. The task force soldiers whose bodies he occupied all had their brains destroyed and died. Soon, Mo Yu and others broke through the blockade of the SCP Foundation personnel in the corridor and came to the hall. Shishan City First People's Hospital was empty at this time, and all the hospital staff and patients were transferred to a safe place. Mo Yu also lamented that the SCP Foundation was so effective. No wonder they had been in the morgue for so long, and the SCP Foundation did not attack them. It turned out that they were busy transferring the people in the hospital, and now the hospital has become an empty nest. There were only them and the SCP Foundation, no ordinary people. When they broke through the blockade of the hall, came to the hospital gate, broke the glass door of the hospital, and came outside. Outside, there were all special forces soldiers and agents. In addition, there were helicopters floating in the sky. The lighting was shining directly on them. Bullets and shells flew towards them frantically. Boom! The SCP-049-2 that blocked the bullets and shells for Mo Yu and the others was torn into pieces in an instant. Go! The densely packed SCP-049-2 formed a human wall in front of them, blocking all attacks for them, and at the same time, they quickly broke through. The death song of the death siren was directly ineffective, because the heavy metal music resounded through the world, directly covering her singing. She could not affect anyone. The only one who had an impact on the SCP Foundation personnel was SCP-166. Her charm made many male task force soldiers and agents lose control and fall into desire. Moreover, many people were permanently affected by SCP-166's desire. There is a certain probability of recovery after being away from SCP-166, however, there is also a certain probability that they will never recover and will be trapped in desire forever. At this time, there were many male task force soldiers and agents who were permanently trapped in desire. They rushed towards S4P-166 frantically, and at the same time, they were affected by the power of desire and fell into illusion. They rushed towards the female task force soldiers and female agents around them frantically. What happened? Why are SCP-1010, SCP-049 and SCP-035 together? In the crowd, Wang Ming and other task force soldiers who had chased Mo Yu looked at Mo Yu in shock. They couldn't understand Mo. How did you get along with these anomalies? However, they lost Mo Yu's trace for many days, and now they finally found Mo Yu again. They would never let Mo Yu escape again, so they followed the crowd and attacked Mo Yu and others frantically. Now, they took killing measures as a priority. In order to deal with SCP-035, the task force soldiers and agents brought out a glass cube box to contain SCP-035. The corrosive liquid from SCP-035 can corrode everything, but it has very little effect on glass. Therefore, when the SCP Foundation contained SCP-035, it put it in a glass container. Now, one glass container after another was brought out to contain SCP-035. Smash them! SCP-035 roared angrily, and the SCP Foundation would never want to use glass instruments to contain him again. He roared. Suddenly, SCP-049 controlled the S4P-049-2 and fired wildly at the glass instruments with the gun in his hand. Then, one by one, the glass instruments were broken into pieces under the attack of these SCP-049-2. Lavender! SCP-049 screamed, because many task force soldiers and agents came towards him with lavender, ready to control him. His natural enemy is lavender. If he smells the scent of lavender, he will instantly become quiet and be contained without any resistance. Don't even think about it. SCP-035 glanced at SCP-049, then, he frantically controlled the corpses, occupied their bodies, and made them stand up from the ground. Then, he ran towards the task force soldiers and agents holding lavender. When he was close to 2 meters, he quickly moved on the faces of these task force soldiers and agents and controlled their bodies. At the same time, he collected all the lavender and threw it into a hidden corner so that they could not pose a threat to SCP-049. Chapter 77. You are listening at novelfull.audio. SCP-049 saw that lavender was killed by SCP-035, and he looked at the people of the SCP Foundation angrily. Then, under the protection of a group of SCP-049-2 people, he continued to perform surgery on the corpses on the ground to revive them. Plague. He kept repeating this word frantically. His eyes were full of hatred. Under his surgery, the corpses were resurrected one by one and became SCP-049-2 to fight. Boom! The SCP Foundation used lethal weapons to tear up the SCP-049-2 one by one. These SCP-049-2 have no sense of pain, and ordinary bullets cannot kill them. Only by tearing their bodies into pieces can they be killed. All the people around Shishan City First People's Hospital were evacuated, and this area was absolutely controlled by the SCP Foundation. The sound of artillery fire also made ordinary humans in the distance feel scared. They didn't understand what happened to the First People's Hospital of Shishan City, as if there was a war. They kept hearing earth-shaking explosions. However, human law enforcers blocked all the entrances to the First People's Hospital of Shishan City, and they couldn't get in. They couldn't know what happened inside. but they could see fear and confusion on the faces of the human law enforcers who blocked the intersections. These human law enforcers were as confused as they were. They didn't know what happened inside, they just accepted orders to evacuate the people and block all the intersections. No one was allowed to approach the First People's Hospital of Shishan City. As for what happened inside, they didn't know. The First People's Hospital of Shishan City had become a ruin under the attack of the SCP Foundation. In order to kill Mo Yu and others, the personnel of the SCP Foundation had spared no effort. In order to capture these anomalies, they searched in Shishan City for many days in a row, but there was no information at all. After finally finding the location of the anomalies, they would definitely not let them go easily. The order given to them was to contain or kill these anomalies at all costs, so they let go completely. In Shishan City, everyone was sleepless tonight. They stood on the balcony, watching the battle in the distance. The sky was full of flames, and no one knew what was happening. The First People's Hospital of Shishan City was under the absolute control of the SCP Foundation, and no information could be transmitted. Mo Yu and others, under the protection of SCP-049-2, have been struggling to resist until now. However, all 4 weeks were sealed. Mo Yu looked at the armored vehicles in front of him, which were like giants, rolling all the way. Even many SCP-049-2 were directly crushed into pieces. Boom! Mo Yu's figure, like a cannonball, instantly jumped onto an armored vehicle. Then he pulled the door of the armored vehicle open with all his strength. The task force soldiers inside looked at Mo Yu in horror and shot him with guns. Mo Yu resisted the attack of bullets. Bullets shot into his chest one by one, but he was unharmed. He rushed into the armored vehicle and broke the neck of the task force soldier inside. Then he drove the armored vehicle towards SCP-166 and the others. "Get in the car," he shouted. Then SCP-166 and the death siren climbed onto the armored vehicle in an instant. "You drive." Mo Yu signaled the death siren to drive. Then he jumped off the armored vehicle. He looked up at a helicopter hovering 10 meters above. It was this helicopter that was playing heavy metal music, covering the death siren's death song. If he could turn off the heavy metal music, then the death song would work again. "System, how can you connect to the helicopter's artificial intelligence and turn off the music?" Mo Yu asked the system. "If the host is 3 meters close to the helicopter, I can connect to the artificial intelligence within 3 seconds and turn off the music," the system said. 3 meters, 0.3 meters is very close. Although the helicopter was suspended at 10 meters, it must have been prepared for him to jump on it. However, he had to turn off the heavy metal music. Therefore, he risked his life and rushed into the task force. Bullets hit him crazily, tearing off his flesh and blood. However, he could recover quickly with his terrifying regenerative power. At the same time, the bullets in his body were squeezed out by his muscles. His eyes he locked onto the helicopter above his head, and then he jumped onto an armored vehicle. He jumped again, and this time he jumped up more than 10 meters high, heading towards the helicopter. However, the helicopter suddenly rose up and avoided his attack. His attack missed. "I've been on guard against you." Wang Ming in the crowd looked at Mo Yu coldly. Mo Yu once used this method to kill a helicopter in the Rattlesnake Desert, and they had been on guard for a long time. "Do you think you're safe if you fly high?" Mo Yu looked at the helicopter above his head coldly. Then he came to the side of an armored vehicle. He grabbed a corner of the armored vehicle, swung it up directly, and spun it several times on the spot. Then he threw the armored vehicle in his hand upward with force. Bang! The armored vehicle was like a cannonball, smashing vertically upward towards the helicopter. The helicopter had no time to dodge. The armored vehicle was too fast, and it collided with the armored vehicle directly. The helicopter was instantly blown up by the armored vehicle and fell from the sky. However, the heavy metal music still sounded. Mo Yu quickly came to the side of the crashed helicopter, approached 3 meters, and asked the system to quickly connect to the artificial intelligence and turn off the heavy metal music. Wang Ming and others saw that Mo Yu actually swung an armored vehicle directly and shot down the helicopter, and everyone was stunned. How could SCP-1010 have such a terrifying power? That everyone couldn't believe it, just like a science fiction movie. But how did they know that Mo Yu swallowed SCP-682 and gained the ability of the grandfather? The grandfather has the power to destroy the world and the terrible regeneration power, and Mo Yu has completely obtained the ability of the grandfather. Swinging an armored vehicle, this is something Mo Yu once dared not to think about, but after swallowing the grandfather, he dared to do it. 3 seconds later, the heavy metal music was turned off by the system. As soon as the heavy metal music stopped, the 4 weeks became much quieter. The death siren also seized the opportunity and sang the death song instantly. The death song filled the sky and earth, and all the task force soldiers and agents were affected. They all stood there in a daze. Run, Mo Yu yelled, if you don't run now, when will you run? P.S. Please urge for more updates, please give me gifts, and please give me 5-star praise. The author has something to say, please give me gifts, please urge for more updates, and please give me 5-star praise. Chapter 78. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The death siren and SCP-166 drove the armored vehicle out of the crowd. SCP-049 and SCP-035 also ran out of the crowd. Mo Yu came to the outside of the crowd as soon as possible. While everyone was affected by the death song, they quickly rushed out of the encirclement of the SCP Foundation, and then disappeared into the night. When the death siren exceeds a certain range, the death song can no longer affect the personnel of the SCP Foundation. They also slowly woke up, and when everyone woke up, they found that Mo Yu and others had run away. Suddenly, all the people in the SCP Foundation were extremely angry. Careless. Damn, how could he swing the armored vehicle? Not after Wang Ming and others woke up, they were also very upset. They thought that playing heavy metal music with a helicopter should be able to end it all. However, Mo Yu suddenly swung the armored vehicle to shoot down the helicopter, and turned off the heavy metal music within 3 seconds. At the same time, the death song sounded instantly. Everything happened too fast, and they had no time to react. Chase, they can't run far. All the SCP Foundation personnel chased Mo Yu and others. After escaping to a safe distance, Mo Yu and others threw away the armored vehicle. They couldn't use the things of the SCP Foundation, and there were locators installed in them. Wherever they went, they would be discovered. They could only walk. Now, we must leave the city. The death siren shouted. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, perhaps. In order to catch them in the urn, the SCP Foundation transferred all the personnel at each exit to the First People's Hospital of Shishan City. However, they escaped successfully. Perhaps, the guards of the SCP Foundation personnel who went to the exit were weaker than usual, and they had a greater chance of escaping. We randomly choose an exit. In this situation, they can only leave it to fate. There are many exits to leave Shishan City. They now randomly choose one. If they are lucky and encounter a guard with fewer people, they will have a higher chance of escaping. Block the whole city, don't let them escape. The SCP Foundation also issued a death order. All the SCP Foundation personnel in Shishan City were dispatched, even the D-Class personnel were released, and all exits were blocked. Do you want to dispatch SCP-096? Wang Ming said to a man beside him. This man was the #1 person in the Shishan City SCP Foundation base. Well, determine their location first, Yang Guang said calmly. Yes, sir, Wang Ming said loudly. SCP-096 is a shy person. SCP-096 is a humanoid creature about 2.38 meters tall, contained in a steel airtight cubic compartment. SCP-096 has almost no muscles on his body, and the SCP Foundation's preliminary weight analysis and experiments show that he has mild malnutrition. SCP-096's arms are seriously disproportionate to his body. Each of his arms is about 1.5 meters long, which is very strange. The angle of SCP-096's jaw can even reach 4 times the angle of an average human jaw. SCP-096's skin is completely devoid of pigment, and there is no hair on his skin surface. SCP-096's eyes look like they are blind. So far, it is not clear whether SCP-096 is blind, and it has not been found that SCP-096 has intelligence. His face is similar to that of a human. SCP-096 is usually very docile and looks non-threatening. However, if someone sees SCP-096's face, whether directly, through video, surveillance, or photos, he will have a sense. Then, he will instantly enter a sad state and lock onto the target. SCP-096 will cover his face with his hands, then scream, cry wildly, and make indistinct and weird sounds. This process lasts for 1 to 2 minutes. About 1 to 2 minutes after being seen, SCP-096 will instantly rush towards the person who sees his face. The speed is very terrifying, and nothing can stop him. According to the experimental records of the SCP Foundation, SCP-096 speed starts at 35 km per hour, as if there is no upper limit. He is like a displacement. No matter where the person who sees him is or how far away he is, he can reach the target in an instant. Moreover, no material or method can stop SCP-096 from rushing to the target. If he is seen on an alien planet, he can also move to the alien planet instantly. Distance has no effect on him. He seems to be born with the ability to lock the position of the person who sees him. The sad SCP-096 moves instantly to the side of the target who sees him, and then kills the target as soon as possible. After killing the target, SCP-096 will sit down and sit quietly for a few minutes. He adjusts his emotions, calms himself down, and slowly becomes docile again, until someone sees him again through various methods. He will be sad and kill again. When he becomes docile again, he will return to his natural habitat. SCP-096 experimental researchers have submitted an application for the termination of SCP-096. However, the SCP Foundation did not execute SCP-096, but secretly contained him as a secret killer of the SCP Foundation. They will use SCP-096 to kill the targets they want to kill. Of course, this project has only been implemented for a short time. The number of times SCP-096 has helped the SCP Foundation kill their targets is not many. At present, it is still in the experimental stage, because the SCP Foundation cannot determine whether SCP-096 will return to the containment place like returning to his habitat after killing the target. For this reason, the SCP Foundation sacrificed several D-Class personnel and used them for experiments. SCP Foundation researchers let a D-Class personnel look directly at him outside the cube where SCP-096 was contained. Finally, SCP-096 screamed in sorrow, and moved out of the cube in an instant 2 minutes later, killing the D-Class personnel. Then, it sat quietly for a few minutes to restore its docile state and return to the cube again. The SCP Foundation continued to experiment, increasing the distance a little bit each time, to test whether SCP-096 would return to the cube that contained him after killing people. After sacrificing more than a dozen D-Class personnel in a row, the SCP Foundation also came to the conclusion that SCP-096 would actively return to the cube that contained him after killing people. Therefore, the SCP Foundation decided to use SCP-096 to help them kill people. Chapter 79. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Using SCP-096 to kill people is a secret project, and the implementation time is very short. However, the results of the test with D-Class personnel show that after SCP-096 kills people, it will actively return to the cube that contains him. Therefore, the SCP Foundation boldly decided to start this project. Now, the base of the SCP Foundation in Shishan City has decided to use SCP-096 to kill Mo Yu and others who are escaping, because they can't seem to find Mo Yu and others. Of course, using SCP-096 to kill people is also a very risky behavior, because they are not sure whether SCP-096 will actively return to the cube that contains him every time he kills people. But now they have no choice. Mo Yu and others will soon break through their defenses and escape, so they must take special measures. Shishan City Ring Road West. This is the transportation hub for entering and leaving Shishan City, and it is a must-go intersection. Mo Yu and his friends chose to break out from here. As long as they break through this exit and enter the highway, they can leave Shishan City. At the intersection of Huanqing West Road, there are some electronic banners above the road. These banners will automatically push advertisements, texts, pictures, etc. You can't escape, come back. At this time, Mo Yu and others saw a line of text displayed on the banner. However, they just glanced at the sentence calmly and didn't care. Did they see that sentence? Yang Guang asked Wang Mingdao, who was using the WASP to monitor Mo Yu and others. I saw it. Wang Ming nodded. Although Mo Yu and others escaped from Shishan First People's Hospital, they were still tracked by the WASP. At this time, through the WASP, it can be seen that MOU and others looked up at the sentence on the banner. Very good, we put the photo of SCP-096 on it. As long as they look up, SCP-096 will rush over to kill them immediately. Yang Guang said coldly. Wang Ming frowned, and Yang Guang now wanted to kill MOU and others. However, Li Xiu said that MOU must not be killed and must be captured alive. Now, he was receiving orders from two leaders at the same time, and he didn't know who to listen to. What, is there a problem? Yang Guang saw that Wang Ming had been silent, as if he had not heard what he said. No problem, sir, I'll do it now. Wang Ming returned to normal. Then, he opened a secret file. This file contained photos of SCP-096. He was also cautious and did not click on the photo directly, but compressed it in the form of a file and transmitted it to the banner above the intersection of Huanqing West Road. During this process, he also held his breath, worried that he would accidentally open the photo of SCP-096. Once he made a mistake, he was finished. Soon, the photo of SCP-096 was transmitted to the banner of Huanqing West Road. On Huanqing West Road, MOU and others were running away. Behind them, dense task force soldiers came over, and the WASP tracked them, leaving them nowhere to escape. They just took the lead and ran a little distance in advance. It would take some time for the task force to catch up with them. At this time, the densely packed task force soldiers came, and they were all solemn. Suddenly, SCP-035 screamed. SCP-096, don't look at the banner. At the moment they heard SCP-096, everyone's heart trembled. Instinctively, they wanted to see the banner. However, fear made them stop their inner thoughts. SCP-096 will kill all targets who see him. SCP-096 is coming. No matter what happens next, don't look at it, don't look at anything. SCP-035 shouted. He was unlucky and accidentally saw the photo of SCP-096 on the banner. He felt the pressure, and he was locked in. He knew he couldn't run away, and all he could do was to remind others as soon as possible. What are you going to do? The death siren asked SCP-035 in horror. I will find a way to stay alive. SCP-035 said hoarsely. He didn't know if he could stop SCP-096. The horror of SCP-096 is well known in the SCP community. Many powerful anomalies are full of fear of SCP-096. After all, known data shows that SCP-096 can kill everyone. SCP-049 walked to SCP-035's side. He controlled SCP-049-2 to come to SCP-035's side, trying to use them to block SCP-096 for SCP-035. SCP-035 shook his head and said, "It's useless, he will move to my side in 1 or 2 minutes and kill me." From now on, SCP-035 has 1 to 2 minutes to escape. However, no matter where he escapes to, he can't escape SCP-096 pursuit. MOU and the others are now lowering their heads and constantly breaking through to the front. They can't do anything. Those who see SCP-096 can only wait for SCP-096 to arrive. The task force soldiers and agents who are chasing MOU and others behind have slowed down. They have received Yang Guang's order to wait for news on the side. At the same time, Yang Guang reminded them not to look at the photos on the banner. All the task force soldiers and agents were trembling in their hearts, and they were afraid. They knew what this meant. This meant that the SCP Foundation had dispatched SCP-096. At this time, they were all in danger, and many of them lowered their heads and dared not look around. Even when they were chasing MOU and the others, they did not dare to look forward. They could only follow the prompts and charge forward. One armored vehicle after another drove silently towards the front of the road. In the sky, the helicopter also raised its altitude, and the eyes of the task force soldiers in the plane did not dare to look around. They closed their eyes and waited for instructions. Fortunately, the helicopter was controlled by artificial intelligence and did not need manual operation. Otherwise, the most afraid person would probably be the driver. The driver must observe the road conditions below, and there is a great probability that he may see SCP-096 on the banner. In the cube containing SCP-096 at the SCP Foundation base, SCP-096 covered his face, screamed, and made unclear sounds. He looked sad. He has been in this state for dozens of seconds, and there is no SCP Foundation personnel around him. Chapter 80. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There was only his voice in the empty cube. After a minute, his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot, as if he had moved across the distance of space and time. He came directly to the fleeing SCP-035. SCP-096 appeared beside SCP-035 with a sad face, and wanted to kill him with a sad face. Close your eyes quickly, don't look at anything. SCP-035 roared. He looked at SCP-096 in horror. He tried to resist, but SCP-096 was too fast, and a punch blew his throat. His head flew directly up and was thrown high in the air. The white ceramic comedy mask instantly moved to the face of a SCP-049-2 next to him. SCP-096 looked at the headless body that fell in front of him, and after he could no longer feel the breath of life, he stopped being sad. He killed the people who saw him, and his emotions slowly calmed down. Mo Yu and others beside him all closed their eyes at this time, not daring to look at all. They closed their eyes when they heard SCP-035's roaring warning. Mo Yu heard the vague sad voice of SCP-096 and the sound of him killing the host of SCP-035 with one punch. Everything happened too fast. His heart was full of fear, his heart was beating violently, and he didn't dare to open his eyes at all. He didn't dare to move. Everyone stood there with their eyes closed. 4 weeks were quiet in an instant, and only the sound of SCP-096 breathing could be heard. They could feel that SCP-096 emotions were calming down little by little. After SCP-035 escaped to the face of one of the SCP-049-2, it directly controlled the body of this SCP-049-2 to stand there like a sculpture, with eyes closed, not daring to move. A few minutes later, SCP-096 emotions finally calmed down. His figure also disappeared instantly. He returned to the cube that contained him. MOU and the others opened their eyes cautiously only after they felt that SCP-096 had left. However, they still did not dare to look around. "Are you still alive?" The Siren of Death asked in a trembling voice. "I'm still alive." The voice of SCP-035 surviving the catastrophe came from the side. This was the most frightening thing he had just experienced. In front of SCP-096, he had no power to resist, and he didn't even have time to escape to the face of another body. If SCP-096's punch was aimed at his face, he felt that the white ceramic comedy mask of his original body would be smashed into pieces. Fortunately, SCP-096 punched his host's throat and broke his neck directly, and his original body was not hurt. Until this moment, he still had lingering fears. He was just a little bit away from death. If that punch was aimed at the mask, he would be finished. Fortunately, SCP-096 only killed people who saw him, and did not care about the white ceramic comedy mask that escaped. He successfully escaped to another body and escaped SCP-096's pursuit. The SCP Foundation actually used SCP-096 to hunt us down. It's simply crazy. From now on, we can't look around casually. The SCP Foundation will definitely use SCP-096 to hunt us down. MOU and his companions were all in fear, but now there is a good thing. All the wasps around them disappeared. When the photo of SCP-096 appeared, all the wasps retreated, because the wasps were monitoring them. If SCP-096 was seen through the wasps, the task force soldiers who were monitoring MOU and others through the wasps behind would be killed instantly by SCP-096. Therefore, at this time, there was nothing around MOU and others. Except for the photo of SCP-096 on the banner, there was no figure of a task force soldier or wasp around. They could go forward unimpeded. Did SCP-096 kill them? Yang Guang asked. Now they couldn't use the wasp to monitor MOU and others, so they didn't know whether they were dead or not. However, SCP-096 had just disappeared once, and they knew that SCP-096 was going to kill people, because, at the base, they heard SCP-096's vague sad voice. Every time SCP-096 made this sad voice, it meant that he would be gone in 1 or 2 days. Minutes later, go kill people. Remove the photos of SCP-096 first, send WASP to see how many people died, Yang Guang ordered. Yes, sir. All the photos of SCP-096 on the banner disappeared, and then WASP appeared next to Mo Yu and the others again. Through WASP, I saw that Mo Yu and the others were unscathed, without any loss. Yang Guang was full of confusion. He didn't expect that SCP-096 didn't kill anyone after going out once. What's going on? SCP-096 missed. How could this be possible? He would definitely kill people when he took action. Yang Guang roared. Wang Ming and other task force soldiers and agents were also full of confusion. Every time SCP-096 went out to kill, it would definitely kill the target. However, now Mo Yu and the others are intact, and no one died. This directly exceeded their expectations, which made them incomprehensible. Something must have happened that we don't know about. Maybe SCP-096 didn't go to kill them just now, but to kill others. Wang Ming said in a deep voice, there is only one explanation. It was not Mo Yu and others who saw SCP-096 just now, but someone they did not know. However, the photo of SCP-096 was strictly controlled by them. In addition to Mo Yu and others, who else could see it? No matter who saw SCP-096, he is dead now. Now we put the photo of SCP-096 back up and make sure they see SCP-096. Yang Guang said coldly, clenching his fists, and vowed not to stop until Mo Yu and others were killed. Yes, sir. Therefore, the WASP had to be withdrawn again. Then, continue to put the photo of SCP-096 on the banner, and at the same time, they also dispatched drones. These drones hung a photo of SCP-096 with a rope. Then, the task force soldiers controlled the drone and flew towards Mo Yu and others. They wanted to use the drone to attract the attention of Mo Yu and others, so that they could see the photo of SCP-096 hanging under the drone.